The annual Wilson family reunion was supposed to be different this time. After years of sending checks and missing holidays, I finally showed up with hope in my heart and designer shoes on my feet. Success had changed a lot about my life, but not my desire to belong. When my brother Alan raised his beer, I thought it was to welcome me home. Instead, his words turned the sunny backyard into a battlefield. Before I dive into what happened next, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if family drama hits close to home. I grew up in a struggling household in rural Pennsylvania where every month was a financial tightrope walk. When I was 12, my parents divorced, throwing our already unstable finances into complete chaos. Mom moved out of state with her new boyfriend, leaving Dad to raise 3 kids on a factory worker's salary. By 15, I was working at the local grocery store after school, bagging items and collecting carts to help with household expenses. My brother Alan, 3 years older, had already dropped out to work full-time at the auto shop. Despite working nearly every day after school and weekends, I maintained straight A's and eventually won a partial scholarship to State University. Even with the scholarship, I worked 2 jobs throughout college, just to afford textbooks and ramen. While Alan and my younger sister Lisa seemed content with their paths, something inside me yearned for more than our small town could offer. During my senior year, I developed an app for tracking and optimizing small business inventory. It started as a class project, but caught the attention of a visiting tech investor. 6 months after graduation, I moved to Silicon Valley with seed funding and a dream. 8 years later, that dream had materialized into a tech company valued at over $80 million. I had made it, at least financially. Despite my success, I maintained a relatively modest lifestyle. Sure, I had a nice apartment in San Francisco, a Tesla, and some designer clothes, but nothing excessively flashy. What I did do with my money was help my family. I paid for my niece, Tara's college tuition, covered the down payment on Alan's house, handled Dad's medical bills after his heart attack, and sent regular checks to Lisa to supplement her teaching salary. All this giving came from a genuine desire to ease the struggles of the people who had shared my difficult childhood. Money could not buy happiness, but it could certainly remove some of the barriers to it. At least that was what I believed until that fateful family reunion. For 3 years, I had sent apologies and gifts instead of attending the annual Wilson gathering. Building a company had consumed my time and energy. This year was different. I had finally hired a competent executive team, the company was stable, and I was determined to reconnect with my roots. I missed my family and craved their acceptance in a way success and money could not satisfy. The reunion was held at Dad's farmhouse, which I had helped renovate last year. As I pulled up in my Tesla, I took a deep breath and mentally prepared for the inevitable comments about my car clothes and lifestyle. The backyard had been transformed with string lights, folding tables covered in checkered cloths, and the smell of barbecue filling the air. A banner reading Wilson Family Reunion 2023 hung between 2 oak trees that had shaded generations of our family. Uncle Tom was the first to greet me with a hearty backslap and immediate mention of his failing hardware store. "Business is tough these days, Jake. Amazon is killing us little guys." The familiar guilt trip had begun before I even reached the food table. My cousin Sarah rushed over to show off her engagement ring, gushing about wedding plans before smoothly transitioning to how expensive venues had become. I smiled and offered genuine congratulations while ignoring the obvious hint. I had brought photo albums I had digitized and printed for everyone, preserving family memories from old slides and negatives found in Dad's attic. The gift received polite thanks but was quickly overshadowed by my cousin Rick's contribution of expensive wines. It seemed tangible wealth impressed more than sentimental efforts. My attempts at genuine conversation repeatedly circled back to money. When I asked about Alan's kids, he mentioned their sports equipment costs. When I inquired about Dad's health, he detailed his insurance deductibles. Every relationship seemed filtered through the lens of financial exchange. Alan had been giving me cold shoulder despite my recently paying off his car loan after he called in a panic about possible repossession. He stood across the yard, beer in hand, occasionally throwing glances my way while talking to our cousins. I could read the tension in his posture, even from a distance. I noticed how I was being introduced to new family members and spouses as the successful one or our tech genius. No mention of my character values or even hobbies. Just my monetary value to the family. While getting another drink, I overheard my Aunt Patricia telling newcomers, "That is Jake, our golden goose. If you need college paid for, he is your man." The words stung more than they should have. I retreated to the kitchen, offering to help with food preparation, only to hear relatives in the adjacent dining room discussing what financial requests to make of me. "Jake will not mind helping with Tommy's braces," my cousin Jennifer said. "But wait until after he has had a few drinks to ask." Only my grandmother seemed to value me beyond my wallet. She pulled me aside to ask about my happiness, not my business. "Are you taking care of yourself, Jacob, not just everyone else?" Her weathered hand patted mine with genuine concern. Despite the growing discomfort, I chose to stay. These people were my blood, my history. Surely beneath the awkward financial dynamic, there was still real family connection to be found. As dinner approached, I noticed the seating arrangement isolated me at the far end of the table, surrounded by the youngest children and elderly relatives who could barely hear. Dad gave a heartfelt speech thanking everyone for their contributions to the reunion, from Uncle Tom, who brought his famous potato salad, to Cousin Rick, who handled the music. My significant financial contribution to the event went unmentioned. Conversations flowed around me, but rarely included me, unless the topic circled to business advice or tech industry insights. When my cousin Pat proudly announced his promotion, someone quickly added, "Not Jake-level money, but we cannot all be geniuses." Questions about my personal life inevitably included warnings. "Found anyone special yet? Gotta be careful these days. So many gold diggers after your type," warned Uncle Dave between bites of brisket. The assumption that my romantic life was primarily defined by financial concerns rather than emotional connection reinforced my growing sense of isolation. As the evening progressed, Alan drank more heavily, each beer making his glances toward me more challenging. When I tried to engage him about his son's baseball team, he replied with clipped answers before turning away. When I complimented his new workshop, which I had partly funded, he mumbled thanks while avoiding eye contact. I made repeated attempts to connect on non-financial topics, sharing stories from college days before my success, or asking about shared childhood memories. These efforts were either redirected or met with superficial engagement before someone inevitably steered the conversation back to my current life and implied resources. Grandmother tried several times to facilitate meaningful interaction. "Jacob was always drawing as a child. Do you still make time for art, dear?" Before I could answer, my cousin interrupted to ask about investing in cryptocurrency. The pain of realizing my role as family outsider, despite my contributions, grew with each interaction. I began to see that my presence was tolerated and even celebrated, not for who I was, but for what I could provide. Memories of past disappointments surfaced throughout the evening. Last year, Alan had called about an emergency loan for car repairs. I later discovered through social media that the money funded a luxury weekend in Las Vegas. I recalled finding out that Dad had bragged to his friends about convincing me to cover a larger house renovation than I had initially offered. The cousin's college fund I had established was partly spent on cosmetic surgery rather than education. During a bathroom break, I accidentally glimpsed my cousin's phone screen, revealing a family group chat I was not part of. The visible message read, "Don't mention the beach house plans until Jake confirms the business loan." Another layer of exclusion and manipulation revealed itself. I remembered sacrifices made to help my family over the years. Business opportunities postponed to handle family emergencies. A relationship that ended partly due to my constant financial involvement, with relatives' vacations interrupted by urgent calls for monetary assistance. The pattern had existed since my first successful funding round, but I had convinced myself it was normal family interdependence. As these realizations accumulated, I considered making an excuse and leaving early. Something kept me in my seat, though. Perhaps it was stubborn hope, or simply a desire to stop running from uncomfortable truths. Alan's hostility increased with each beer. His comments evolved from subtle jabs to more direct attacks. "Must be nice to think you are better than everyone because you got lucky with some app," he said loudly enough for nearby relatives to hear. When I attempted to downplay my success and acknowledge my privilege, he scoffed. Classic Jake, so humble while wearing $1,000 shoes. Later, he deliberately bumped into me, spilling beer on those very shoes with an obviously insincere apology. Each time I engaged in one-on-one conversation with a family member, Alan would interrupt with an inside joke or reference that excluded me. Some relatives seemed uncomfortable with his behavior but did nothing to intervene. Dad occasionally threw concerned glances but remained silent. Grandmother pulled me aside briefly. Alan has been talking all week about putting you in your place. Something about you showing up your father by becoming so successful. Jealousy is an ugly thing in families. I maintained my composure despite mounting frustration. This was supposed to be a reconnection, a chance to be more than a distant benefactor. Instead, it was becoming a showcase for years of unaddressed resentment. The tension reached breaking point as everyone gathered at the main table for dinner. The early summer evening had turned golden, lighting the backyard in warm hues that contrasted with the chilling atmosphere developing around me. Once everyone was seated with plates full of barbecue, Dad stood up with his glass raised. "Before we dig in, does anyone want to say a few words?" Alan immediately pushed back his chair and stood swaying slightly from the numerous beers he had consumed throughout the day. All conversation ceased as attention turned to my brother. I felt a momentary hope that perhaps this would be a turning point, a chance to clear the air. "I would like to make a toast," Alan announced, his voice carrying across the yard. He lifted his beer bottle, high amber liquid catching the light. "Family is everything, right? Through thick and thin, we Wilsons stick together." Several relatives nodded in agreement, and I felt myself relaxing slightly. Maybe I had misread the situation. Then Alan's expression shifted subtly, his mouth curling into something between a smile and a sneer. "Here's to Jake, our walking ATM, who mistook money for a personality." The words landed like a physical blow. A brief, shocked silence followed before uncomfortable laughter began to ripple through the gathering. I sat frozen, unable to process the public humiliation happening in real time. The laughter might have died a natural death if Dad had not chosen to add his contribution. He raised his own glass and said with a chuckle, "Good thing he is rich, because he sure did not get the brains." That endorsement opened the floodgates. The laughter grew more confident, more genuine. A few relatives looked uncomfortable but remained silent. Others actually added their own jokes at my expense. "At least we know who to call when the bills come due. His wallet has more personality than he does anyway." My face burned and my hands trembled slightly under the table. My stomach felt like I had swallowed ice. The complete betrayal of sitting among people who I had supported, cared for, and longed to connect with, only to discover I was the family joke, was almost unbearable. In that crystallizing moment, everything became clear. I saw with perfect clarity what I had been blind to for years. The calls that only came when money was needed. The gratitude that never extended beyond the immediate transaction. The relationships that had become purely extractive. My mind raced through a mental inventory. 6 family mortgages. I was helping with 4 sets of college tuitions, 3 business loans, countless medical bills, monthly transfers to supplement incomes, credit cards I maintained for emergencies. I had financially supported most of the people now laughing at me for the better part of a decade. I had used money to try buying the affection and acceptance I craved after achieving success that separated me from my roots. In doing so, I had enabled this very moment, this very betrayal. The realization brought an unexpected calm washing over me. The path forward suddenly became crystal clear. I had spent years worrying that setting boundaries would make me the villain in my family's story. Sitting there as the butt of their jokes, I realized I was already cast in that role despite my generosity. Continuing this pattern was unhealthy for everyone involved. As the laughter gradually subsided, I remained perfectly still, my lack of visible reaction causing some confusion around the table. Rather than the embarrassment or anger they expected, I felt oddly empowered. Self-respect demanded immediate action, not later rationalization or forgiveness without change. When the yard had finally quieted, all eyes still on me, to gauge my response, I reached deliberately into my pocket and removed my phone. With measured movements, I unlocked it and opened my banking app. The family watched, uncertain what was happening. I smiled, not with warmth, but with the certainty of someone who has finally seen the truth. "Cool," I said, my voice steady and clear across the now silent gathering. "Then let us see how smart you feel when your credit cards stop working tonight." The collective intake of breath was audible. Faces that had been creased with laughter seconds before now froze in shock. Alan's face drained of color so quickly I thought he might faint. Dad's mouth opened and closed without producing sound. "Jake, buddy, it was just a joke," Uncle Tom started. "We did not mean anything by it," my cousin Sarah added quickly. Alan finally found his voice. "Come on, you cannot be serious. After everything this family has done for you, that was perhaps the most revealing statement of all. After everything they had done for me, the cognitive dissonance was staggering." Dad began what sounded like the start of an apology, but I had heard enough. I stood up slowly, dropped my napkin on my untouched dessert, and walked away from the table with as much dignity as I could muster. "Jacob, wait," Grandmother called, the only voice that nearly made me turn back. The sound of my car starting punctuated the stunned silence I left behind. In my rearview mirror, I could see them still sitting there, the realization of consequences beginning to dawn on their faces. Driving away, I experienced a tumultuous mix of emotions. Regret for the relationships that might be irreparably damaged. Relief at finally breaking free from a toxic dynamic. Resolution to build something healthier moving forward, both for myself and potentially for my family. Instead of returning to the guest room at Dad's house where I had planned to stay, I checked into a hotel 30 miles away. My phone exploded with notifications, texts, and calls from various family members. I read them all but responded to none that night. I need to be better than them, not cruel, I thought. I would follow through on the financial consequences, but I would do it thoughtfully. The next morning, I met with my financial advisor to restructure my family support system. I suspended the credit cards I maintained for various family members and canceled the automatic payments to accounts that had become expected rather than appreciated. I drafted a carefully worded email explaining my decision and establishing clear boundaries moving forward. I wanted to be fair but firm. This was not about punishment, but about resetting unhealthy patterns. My support has been taken for granted, and my presence valued only for what I can provide. Going forward, I am willing to help with true emergencies and educational expenses for the younger generation, but regular subsidies and lifestyle support will end. I remain open to rebuilding relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. I sent individual variations to each family member customized to our specific dynamics and history. Some would likely never speak to me again once the reality of financial independence set in. Others might recognize the opportunity for authentic connection. Either way, I had taken the first step towards something healthier for all of us. The initial responses were predictable. Anger manipulation guilt trips. Dad called 17 times in one day. Alan sent messages alternating between rage and desperate apologies. But I held firm, knowing that immediate capitulation would only reinforce the dysfunctional pattern. Grandmother was the first to respond with genuine understanding. "It takes courage to stop an unhealthy pattern," she said, when I finally answered her call. "I am sad it came to this, but proud of you for standing up for yourself." My niece Tara visited me 2 weeks later. "Dad and Grandpa are furious, but honestly, I get it," she said over coffee. "The family treats you like a bank, not a person. It is messed up." I assured her that her education funding was secure, provided she maintained honest communication with me about her needs and progress. The family split into factions, those who recognized the truth in my actions and those who could not see past their own entitlement. I made it clear to Dad and Alan that our relationship could only be rebuilt through family therapy and demonstrated behavior change. Some relationships went dormant, perhaps permanently. I began building social connections outside my family circle, joining community organizations where my value was not tied to my net worth. I developed a friendship with a business mentor who had navigated similar family challenges after his success. The most difficult aspect was allowing my family to experience the natural consequences of financial reality. When Alan called about potentially losing his house, I offered to help him create a budget rather than sending money. When Dad complained about downsizing, I reminded him that most people live within their actual means. Through therapy, I started to understand the childhood patterns that had led to my financial enabling. Growing up with scarcity had made generosity my love language, but I needed to learn the difference between healthy giving and harmful enabling. I needed to find worth in who I was rather than what I could provide. 6 months after the disastrous reunion, a smaller family gathering took place. Only those who had demonstrated respect for my boundaries were invited. We talked about memories, dreams, and connections without a single mention of financial assistance. It was awkward at times, but fundamentally more authentic than any interaction we had shared in years. Not everyone chose to rebuild their relationship with me on these new terms. Some family members decided that a connection without financial benefit was not worth maintaining. As painful as these losses were, I recognized them as confirmation that my boundaries were necessary. The journey taught me that true generosity empowers others rather than enabling dependence. Authentic family supports growth and celebrates success without exploitation. My enabling behavior had hurt both me and my family, creating resentment where there could have been genuine connection. The freedom I discovered through establishing healthy boundaries extended beyond family relationships. I became more discerning in business partnerships, friendships, and romantic connections. I reconnected with passion projects I had abandoned while focusing on family needs. I found peace in knowing my worth was not tied to my wallet. I do not know if all my family relationships will fully heal. Some wounds cut too deep, some patterns became too entrenched, but I know that living authentically, even with difficult consequences, brings a peace that people-pleasing never could. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took advantage of your generosity? What signs do you look for to distinguish between healthy giving and harmful enabling? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more authentic stories about family dynamics and personal growth. Remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and others, is to establish clear boundaries. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to create healthy relationships in your own life.